We immediately turn it over to Father Cyril Hovorun from the Theological Academy of Kiev, taking us to the post-atheist setting.
Thank you. Well, I need to present myself in a few words. Yes, in the program I'm representing the Theological Academy of Kiev, but I'm also representing the postgraduate school of the Russian Orthodox Church, and currently I'm a research fellow at Yale University. And until recently, I was in charge of the process of reform of the theological education in the Russian Church. My paper is about the post-atheist setting and how the dialogue between religion and science goes on in this setting. It has to do a lot with the previous paper, and actually my point will be that the post-Soviet or post-atheist setting is very much similar to the post-secular context wider in Europe and in the US, though it has its own distinctiveness, its own features, and the dialogue between religion and science also differs from the dialogue between religion and science in the wider Western context. And I'm going to address the specificity, if you wish, of the dialogue between religion and science in the post-Soviet context. So the dialogue between religion and science, as well as the post-secularism in this post-Soviet context, is quite specific. It is post-Soviet and it is post-atheist. Soviet atheism was a special sort of atheism. It was extremal, very much namely anti-religious, and as such, quasi-religious. It was called militant. I'll show you a few funny pictures now. That should go, yeah. At the same time, it was also declared scientific. It became a full embodiment of the Soviet phenomenon of science being turned into an instrument of propaganda. Birth of the scientific atheism was blessed in 1954 with the decision of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of the USSR called about significant failures in the scientific atheistic propaganda and measures of improving it. In 1958, the Department on Propaganda and Agitation of the Central Committee of the Communist Party produced a classified report where it recommended, together with other measures of atheistic propaganda, the following. The Ministry of, I quote, the Ministry of the Highest Education of the USSR and faculties of philosophy of universities should secure training of philosophers with profound knowledge of atheism who would be able to propagate efficiently scientific atheism. Relevant changes should be introduced to the educational plans and programs of the faculties of philosophy. End of quote. Soon after this report was produced, the Central Committee of the Communist Party issued a document, also classified, where it urged all the party and state organizations in the Soviet Union to implement the recommendations of the above document. As a follow-up of this party imperative, in 1959, a course of Basics of the Scientific Atheism was introduced as a part of obligatory curriculum in the highest educational institutions of the Soviet Union. In 1964, an Institute of Scientific Atheism was established. It became a part of the Academy of Social Sciences, which in turn was an institution of under the Central Committee of the Communist Party. The Department for Ideology of the Central Committee managed the activities of the newly established institute. Among its responsibilities was coordination of the atheist studies in all academic and educational institutions of the Soviet Union. The institute developed massive publishing activities. For instance, it published a periodical Questions of Scientific Atheism. 39 volumes altogether were published, each approximately 20,000 copies. This is a title page of one of these periodical. The policy of forceful infiltration of the scientific atheism to all the branches of the Soviet academia shaped a specific approach to the relationship between science and religion among those who went through the system of the higher education during the Soviet period. This approach affected not only those in humanities or social sciences, but also in science. This approach was built on the scientific materialism, similar to the positivism of the 19th century. Not only positivism was imported from the 19th century as a precondition of radical divorce between science and religion in the Soviet academia, there were other pre-Soviet situations that helped the Communist Party to polarize theology and science. Among those situations was a separation of theological education from university. Here on the picture you see two, facades. One facade is of the Theological Academy of St. Petersburg, as it was built traditionally in the beginning of the 19th century, and another facade is of the university in St. Petersburg. Theology was never a full part of the university in the Russian Empire. From the very beginning of the Russian university, it was decided that theology should function separately from it. Theology was confined to its own locus, the theological academies. They constituted a self-sufficient system. Although this system was fully recognized and sponsored by the state, it was not allowed to be a part of the university. So actually these two facades, though they are approximately the same location, they represent two different, completely different and separated from the very beginning systems. After the Bolshevik Revolution, this separation helped the Soviet regime to get rid of theology in the educational system altogether. So hence is an important conclusion. If you keep theological education separate from the university, you may have consequences that we had experienced in the Soviet Union. Therefore, it is important to keep them together. And the mistake of the Russian Empire to separate them led exactly to this very militant confrontation between science and religion. I think this conclusion can be helpful for us here. All these factors became a serious obstacle for revival of theology after the change of the regime. Still, theology struggles to achieve two important things. First, to be recognized as a proper academic discipline, and second, to be reintroduced to the educational system in Russia. I skip, a good deal of my text.
I'm going to read it.
Observers speak now of anti-clerical reactions to the active return of the church to the public life in Russia. Voices of rebuking, and this is another problem which I'm going to address briefly. The voices of rebuking are heard also from the academic environment. The loudest among them was a so-called letter of Academicians. This was an open address to the president of Russia at the time, Mr. Putin. It was his second term. This letter is titled Policy of the Russian Orthodox Church, Consolidation or Collapse of the Country. 10 members of the Russian Academy of Science signed the letter. Remarkably, among them were just 2 biologists and 1 medical doctor. The rest 7 were physicists, including Nobel Prize winners Zhoris Alfyorov and Vitaly Ginzburg. Here are the, it's from the script, these are the guys. The authors of the letter express their anxiety about increasing clericalization of the Russian society and about active penetration of the church to all the spheres of the social life. They accentuate their major concern as follows, I quote, "We cannot remain indifferent about attempts to doubt the scientific knowledge with capital K, and to substitute knowledge accumulated by science with faith," end of quote. Thus, they consider science as essentially incompatible with religion. The main point of the incompatibility, in their view, is the materialistic nature of science. They state, I quote again, "All achievements of the modern science are based on the materialistic outlook on the world. There is nothing else in the modern science," end of quote. Quite a rather radical statement, isn't it? Thus, the Russian academicians declare themselves to be materialists. All true scientists are also materialists in their belief. Well, a rather communist approach, isn't it? One can easily see in this appeal rudiments of the communist approach to the science, when there can be either religion or science never together. No wonder, therefore, that Zhoris Alfyorov, for instance, is a member of the Russian parliament from the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. it's not about criticizing him. It's about just stating the things as they are. The 10 academicians raised in their letter another important issue of the dialogue. This is an issue of legalization of theology in the academic system of Russia. The academicians objected to it because they believe that science is based on the materialistic philosophy. There are many figures in the Russian academia who do not share materialism confessed by the 10 academicians. Yet, they do not believe that theology is an academic discipline and can be treated equally with other disciplines. They can be very positive about religion and even build churches on the campuses of their universities, but they want theology to stand outside of the doors of the university auditoria. Theology experiences resistance on all levels of education in Russia. Until recently, elementary religious education was not allowed to the secondary school. And this is a picture from Soviet propaganda against religion in schools. Only a couple of years ago, it started to be introduced to the schools as an optional subject called Basics of the Orthodox Culture. On the level of university, this is a title page from the textbook, school textbook. On the level of university, the Church for many years fought for theology to be introduced to the curriculum. Just a year ago, educational standards for bachelor and master programs were accepted by the state, though theology constitutes only approximately half in these programs. Well, this was my responsibility when I was in Moscow to struggle for the introduction of theology to the curriculum. In the Russian education system, there is an institution, a funny institution, so very curious, which has an ultimate responsibility for defenses of dissertations. It's not up to the university to decide whether a dissertation is fitting the criteria. Anyone who defends his or her dissertation goes through the university, but then the dissertation, the decision of the university has to be confirmed by this supra-university institution, which comes out from the Soviet time, and initially it was in charge of the thesis to be fitting the ideological criteria. So they had to fit exactly the communist pattern of thinking. And now they do different things, but still, the institution is there. It is called the highest attestation commission. It functions on the basis of the Ministry of Education and Science and stands above all the universities. The commission should approve all dissertations defended in any recognized educational institution of Russia. For this, a dissertation should correspond to one of the specializations accepted by the commission. Theology is not on the list of the commission, and the Church for approximately 20 years struggles now for theology to be included to this list. So far, the struggle is unsuccessful. Yes, students are unable to submit their thesis in theology at the institutions accredited by the state. This also remains a serious obstacle in the dialogue between theology and science. Well, just a few sentences of conclusion. The dialogue between theology and science in Russia and more generally in the post-Soviet context goes on under conditions of post-secularity. It's quite clear. And this post-secularity is specifically Russian or post-Soviet, if you wish. It combines elements of the communist ideology of the past, primitive positivism in understanding of the nature of science, complexities of the church-state society relations, and other features. But it goes on, it exists, the dialogue exists, it develops according to its own lines, and this gives hope. And well, I think what can help this dialogue to go on is exactly a convergence with larger dialogues between religion and science, which go on, well, in the West widely, and this conference, I hope, will contribute to that dialogue. Thank you.